As we said, today is the last week. We've been hanging out in the book of Acts. I'm going to urge you now to grab your Bible and flip to Acts chapter 1. We're going to do a little recap of the first part of the book of Acts before we get to our final piece, Acts 10, which is today. You just heard that read. But flip to the front part of the book of Acts. By the way, I say this regularly. I'm going to continue to say this. If you don't have a pew Bible, please take one of these from the pew. If you don't have a Bible, take one of the pew Bibles from the pew. Please take it home, write in it. It's yours. We can restock them. In fact, we just ordered all new Bibles for the pews to be put in sometime, hopefully later this week or early next week. So take these, take them to friends, give them away. We want people to have God's Word. Yeah? So here's the question of the day. We've kind of been chewing on this series, and we've looked at different angles, and we've kind of plotted, but hopefully now you have gotten a sense that everything we've done hangs in Acts 1:8. Right? Acts chapter 1, verse 8. If you've not picked that up from this series, pick it up right now. Acts 1:8 is one of those verses you should memorize and stick in your brain, because Acts 1:8, what we see is this: Jesus is preparing to ascend, and Jesus says to his disciples, here's the deal. I've given you faith for a reason. Now, this isn't Jesus' words, but this is kind of what he's saying. I've given you faith for a reason. Now go and be my witnesses to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. In other words, I'm giving you faith not so that you can hang out in a nice, warm St. Andrew's sanctuary, but I've given you faith so that you can live on the edge, being my witnesses, saying what I've said, saying what I've done, testifying to who I am, everywhere and to everyone that you come in contact with, right? And now what we're going to see in the next sections of Acts, we've seen it the last couple weeks, is the unfolding of that statement. But as we go through this recap, please, hear me now, don't fall in the trap of thinking this is just history. Don't fall in the trap and think that this is just Jesus telling 12 little ragtag dudes and a couple other people to go be his witnesses. Because yes, Jesus was telling 12 or so ragtag little people to go be his witnesses. However, that expectation of his church continues. That Jesus has given his church grace and acceptance. And it's called us his kids, and please understand how sweet and beautiful that is. That in the midst of our junk and our messed up lives and our imperfect attempts to please him and all the crud that you do and I do daily, God comes to us and says, you're my people. I love you. And there's nothing you could ever do that would separate you from that love. That is true, but don't fall in the trap of thinking that's it. Because this good news is not like some little life insurance policy that we get to clutch to our chest and hang on to. It is intended from the very beginning to impact those people around us. So here's what we're going to do. In order to catch you up to speed, we are going to do as fast as I can do it, flyby of the book of Acts. You ready? Get your pencils ready. Jot whatever notes you can write in this amount of time. But I'm going to fly you through the book of Acts. Here we go. Acts chapter 1, what do we get? Jesus is about to ascending. He drops this Acts 1:8 command on his church. Go be my witnesses. We get a little replacement of Judah, and we wrap up Acts 1. Yeah? So Judas is replaced. The 12 are back in whole. We roll into Acts 2 when the Holy Spirit is given. Peter's going to start doing what Peter's going to do through the most of the book of Acts. Peter's going to start preaching. We get this message that the Christian church is united, and we roll out of Acts 2. We roll into Acts 3, and guess what we find Peter doing? Yep, he's still preaching. You know why? Because Jesus says, go be my witnesses, and Peter's going to proclaim that. And so throughout the book of Acts, Peter's going to preach over and over and over and over and over again, as are others. So in Acts 3, we get Peter preaching again. We also get the hint that there's miraculous things that are happening in the church. People are healing, dead are raised. There's some cool stuff going on in the church. Acts 4, guess what? You should be picking up a theme. You know what we find in Acts 4? Peter preaching. Interestingly, now in Acts 4, John's going to start preaching with him. We get the sense of that. So now we got Peter and John. They're preaching. The church continues to be united. They're praying for boldness. They continue to grow. They experience a season of peace. We're going to hear that again later after Saul's converted. There's this cool thing going on in the church until Acts 5. And in Acts 5, we get our first little bump. Because there's these two people, Ananias and Sapphira, who not only lie to the church, but more importantly, lie to God about what they have financially. Now, we could do a whole sermon series on this topic alone, but I feel obliged to give you at least this nugget. Some of us view giving as though it is giving to St. Andrew. And then when we decide we don't like St. Andrew anymore, we lock the wallet and put it back in our pockets. That's not giving. This is not about giving to the church. This is about giving to the Lord through the church. You tracking with me? So when Ananias and Sapphira hold back money, they're not doing it because they're keeping it from the church. No, they're keeping it from the Lord who owns everything. You follow? So we just tucked a little stewardship sermon in there. That one was free. But we get the first road bump. Ananias and Sapphira hold back. The church struggles a little bit with their decision. And then yet in the midst of that, we conclude the chapter with more miraculous things. And then we begin this series of arrests and speeches and release and arrests and speeches and release. We see that in Acts 5. We're going to see that later on in Acts 7. We'll jump right now to Acts 6. Pastor Mark talked about it 2 weeks ago in Acts 6. We see the setting aside of this handful of other dudes. So we now not only have the 12, but now we've picked some other dudes for ministry. And in the following chapters, these other dudes, these 7, are going to be the ones who go out. Philip, most notable among them, and they start extending. So what I want you to get is that in Acts 1:8, God says, you'll be my witnesses here, there, and everywhere. And then slowly in the book of Acts, we see him starting to extend those geographic circles. You follow? Then we roll into this whole crazy section, we talked about it last week, of Stephen being persecuted, struggling, making this great speech about who Jesus is, and paying for it with his life. The church is persecuted, and it's scattered, and the rings go out even further. In chapter 9, Saul, who will soon become Paul, and who happens to be the guy back in the last chapter who is persecuting the church, he's going to have an interaction with Jesus. And I hate to break it to you, but when you come face to face with Jesus, the world changes. He comes face to face with Jesus, and he becomes a Christ follower. And then this craziness happens. He ends up in Damascus with his old friends, and they don't want anything to do with them. And then he goes to Jerusalem to hang out with his new friends, these Jesus followers, and at first they don't want anything to do with him. And Saul's kind of a man without a country because of the life that he has lived and this strange transition of old world to new world, which probably ought to teach us something about how we interact with unbelievers who come to know Jesus. It's not a simple step, y'all. It's not like one day I was pre-baptized and now I'm baptized and that's all that has changed. No, the world changes when you come face to face with Jesus and God claims you. And so we see that even in Saul, who's going to become the pillar of the church moving forward. But again, what do we see? We see the church growing. We see the boundaries extending geographically. God is fulfilling what he said he would fulfill, that his church, his people, would be his witnesses to the ends of the earth. Yeah? And then we get to Acts chapter 10. You heard it read. You saw the video. By the way, it took Pastor Mark and I a long time sitting in that plane to memorize that song. A long time. Chapter 10, things get kind of goofy. Because now there's this dude, Cornelius. Cornelius is like a captain in the army. In fact, Luke in Acts is going to describe him as a man who feared God. Let me do that right now with you. Verse 2, it says in your translation that he either feared God or he was a God-fearer or something along those lines, depending on what translation you're using. And some people have speculated saying, oh, so Cornelius was a Christian, just not a Jew. I'm going to fix that for you right now. That's not the case. God-fearer did not mean follower of Jesus. What God-fearer meant was that Cornelius looked at his culture, the culture of his day, that was largely polytheistic, worshipped multiple gods for multiple reasons, for basically anything that you wanted. Cornelius looked at that culture and said, well, that's kind of stupid. I think there's one God. I'm not sure who he is, but there's one God. In fact, Jews might have the right God, so sure, let's do this one God thing. You follow? So when it says God-fearer or feared God, that means he had stepped away from his polytheistic culture and had stepped into monotheism, even though he didn't know who that monotheistic God truly was. That's what we get. So Cornelius is going to be told to send for Peter, right? Can you grasp that, by the way? Like, Peter's Peter. You know what I mean? Like Peter is the dude who was with Jesus most of the time. Peter's kind of a bedrock fella. Can you imagine being sent to Peter when you're not even sure about this whole God thing? Like, you get that there's a God, but you're not quite sure who he is, and then you're sent to Peter? But the story gets even weirder, because on Peter's end, he gets to have a dream on a rooftop where he sees a sheet being lowered to heaven with animals in it and God doing what God does. God speaks to Peter in the situations of Peter's life. You may not pick that up from the text, but it's pretty cool. The text tells us that Peter is hungry, and so God is going to speak to him in the midst of his hunger. So Peter's on the roof, hungry, tummy's grumbling, and God lowers this sheet full of animals and says, hey, Peter, why don't you get something to eat? And Peter says, not me, Lord. These lips have never touched unclean animals. Isn't he so pure? Good old Peter. No, Lord, not me. And God kind of smacks him in the head and says, how dare you call something that I have created and made clean? How dare you call that thing unclean? Eat, Peter. And just then we get at the front door. Okay, I'll go get the door. And Peter gets the door, and there's these guys from Cornelius who have come to him and said, hey, our master Cornelius sent us to you, and you should come with us. And Peter goes, I get it, Lord. I get it. That really wasn't about animals at all, though Luke adds the little nugget at the end that thus God declared all food clean, but that wasn't the point. Peter says the point is that not only, God, are you extending your boundaries geographically, but there are now no longer ethnic boundaries either. Let me say that again. Up until this point, the Jews, the Jesus followers, understood that they were supposed to carry the news of Jesus to everyone they met, but they thought everyone they met who was Jewish got to hear about Jesus, because that's how God was going to fulfill his promises. Now, in this moment, God is going to rewrite the deck, or at least he's going to reset the deck, because if you go all the way back to when God claimed Israel anyway, he claimed them to be his witnesses to all nations. And they kind of burrowed into their own little niche and said, oh, we're about the Jews. And now in this dream, God is going to reset things. And he's going to say, not only am I extending geographic boundaries, but there are no longer ethnic boundaries to the work of my kingdom either. You following me? Y'all up to speed? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sess, but I mean, as much as you'd like to, you don't represent everyone. God is going to knock down boundaries. Here's the question. And I hesitate to do this to you because it's going to make you squirm, and I understand that. But do you still have boundaries in the way that you live out the gospel? I mean, are there people in your life that are kind of beyond reach? Do you know what I mean? Like if you interact with them, you think, oh, somebody else can tell them about Jesus. Because I'm not telling them about Jesus. And by the way, maybe that means they're super rich and you're super not and you're intimidated by them. Maybe that means they're super not and you super are and you don't want to be dirtied by them. I don't know what the deal is, but you have people that you have constructed boundaries that the gospel is not allowed to cross from you to them. Do you have boundaries? Have you reinstated that which God has removed? I'm not asking for a show of hands. I'm not asking you to fall on your face and repent publicly, but I am asking you to consider the question. Or maybe it's even more sinister than that. Maybe there aren't boundaries. Maybe you're just so self-centered, so concerned with your own life that you forget there are other people who don't know about Jesus. Or maybe you think, oh, well, those other people in our community, we live in Cape Girardeau, everyone knows about Jesus. They're all God-fearers. They don't need to know about Jesus. But maybe they do. Maybe they're God-fearers in the fact they recognize there is a God, but maybe their God isn't the God of Scriptures. Maybe their God isn't the God who sent you to be his witness to them. Yeah? Maybe we're so, and I say we're, not you, we're so consumed with our own lives that we don't even know the people that God has placed around us. And as we finish our Multiply series, I kind of want to put my finger in your chest and say to you, do you even know who God has placed you in the middle of? So here's what I want you to do. Grab a blank piece of paper, grab your worship guide, write on the back of the jacket of the person in front of you. I don't care where you write this, but I want you to have a writing surface in front of you. Everyone with jackets right now is taking them off because they're uncomfortable. Okay? Here's what I want you to do. We got a few minutes. Just quickly, I want you to think about every piece of property that touches the piece of property where you live. And I want you to write the names of the people who live there. And by when I mean names, I don't mean like I know the husband because we play golf together, but I couldn't tell you his kids. I mean the names of the people who live there. Dads, moms, kids, grandkids, whomever lives there, I want you to write their names. Every piece of property that touches your piece of property, write down the names of the people who live there. All right, we're not going to take all the time for you to rack your brains. You can finish this at home, but was that easy? Was it easy? Some of you who live in the country, you're like, I have 2 neighbors. That was super easy. Some of you who live near a family were like, yeah, grandma lives on that side, and dad lives on that side, and mom lives on that side. But as a rule, was that easy to do? All right, let's step it down a notch, because some of you are sitting smug right now. Some of you are scared to death, because when I asked you to do this, it was like I asked you to sacrifice your firstborn child. You looked at me with these deer in the headlights like, how dare you ask me? I don't know those people. But some of you, on the other hand, I can tell you're sitting kind of smug, and you're like, I know everyone around me. So let's step it down a notch. How many of those people have you had a meaningful conversation about Jesus with? How many of them? By the way, if that freaks you out, how many people at work have you had a meaningful conversation about Jesus? How many people have you shared life with in such a way that there is an opportunity presented to you, and I promise it has been presented to you, for you to be Jesus' witness to them? How many times? Let's give a quick little scale. A lot? Some? Not very many? My guess is that you're like most of us, and the answer to that question, if you're honest, is not very many. I mean, you might have a superficial conversation like, man, Pastor John killed it today, which I'm sure most of you say every Sunday when you encounter people. But that's not a meaningful conversation about Jesus. A meaningful conversation about Jesus is when you share life with such a person in such a way that you get to speak into their brokenness. You get to proclaim hope in their hopelessness. You get to be light in the darkness. That's when you build meaningful relationships for the sake of the kingdom. And the reason that I have you do this is not because I want to make you uncomfortable just for the sake of being uncomfortable. I want to make you uncomfortable to help you understand that American life is all about individualism, and yet the gospel isn't. Did you hear that? American life is all about individualism. It's about my life and my interests and me and Jesus, but the gospel isn't about that. The gospel is about God's people who have been claimed for a purpose. And by the way, that purpose goes beyond selling bank loans or selling tires. It goes beyond working at Walmart or flipping burgers. God's purpose is to be his witnesses to the ends of the earth. Now, you may fulfill that by flipping burgers or selling tires, but that's not why God claimed you. God claimed you to be his witnesses to those people you come in contact with. And if you can't start with the people right around you, I'm not saying that's your first step, that it has to be your first step, but if you can't start with the people right around you, how are you going to start with the people next door to them, or next door to them, or the people that are 3 cubicles away from you at work? How are you going to fold that off? Yeah? Because brothers and sisters, God has claimed us for more than just forgiveness. God has claimed us for life in him. Full, whole, total life in him. And so today I just want to challenge you. Don't wait, by the way, until like next week. Don't make a plan next week. I'm going to share the gospel with my neighbor. Okay? Because that's a cop-out. Figure out a way today to go interact with someone. I'm not saying, hear me clearly, I'm not saying you like pull into your garage and you leave the garage door up and you walk across the street to your neighbor and you're like, hey, I got to tell you about Jesus. Because, by the way, no one cares. They're going to slam the door in your face. But what I am telling you is to find a way to invest in relationships that allow you to speak of Jesus when the opportunity presents itself. You hear me? So maybe bake bread. Maybe invite them over to see the world's greatest football team, the Green Bay Packers, play later today as we defeat our opponents. Maybe that's root on the Cardinals who didn't do so well last night. Maybe that's throw some burgers on the grill. Maybe that's go cut their lawn for them. I don't know what it is, but find a way today to do something. Can you commit to that? Is that asking too much? I'm asking sincerely. Is that asking too much? To do something today with this identity, this grace that God has given us as his church. Because when we do that, the church multiplies. Not just by filling seats, but by bringing people to God's altar and immersing them in the waters of baptism and having God claim them through those waters. He puts his name on them and he says, I love you just as he has you. And he gives their life meaning. It's a cool thing, yeah? So today, go home and do something. Go do something with this grace that you've been given. Now, that's where the sermon's supposed to end. But I'm feeling conflicted right now. You're going to see your pastor in a moment of vulnerability. You ready for this? Sess, I apologize to you. I shouldn't have called you out. So, my apologies. It was inappropriate for me to do that, and I publicly did it. I'm going to publicly ask for your forgiveness. Thank you. See, isn't it good that we can do that? We live in a church of grace, right? So, it's okay. By the way, that was humbling for me, and I debated the entire time I was talking to you about, am I going to do it or am I not going to do it? Because I, like you, am afraid of the public ridicule, and I was afraid Sess was going to go, Pastor. But she knows I love her, right, Sess? Yeah, amen. So today, leave here. Don't just sing good songs, happy songs, but think about those names that you either wrote down or couldn't write down. Pray for them, engage them, and be God's church. Advance his kingdom. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, God, thank you. First of all, thanks for grace. Thanks for spontaneous demonstrations of grace that you provide that remind us that we're all flawed. We all make missteps. And you forgive us. You not only forgive us through your word, but you forgive us through your church, that we can ask for forgiveness and we can receive it if it's appropriate. And God, that's so cool. Thanks, Lord, for claiming us as your kids, not just so that we could be smug little Jesus followers, but so that we could be passionate disciples. So that we could leave this place today looking for opportunities to be your witness, building relationships with people who are broken and hurting and struggling, so that we can be your witness. God, mobilize us for that today. And then, Lord, restore us and challenge us and stretch us and restore us and challenge us and stretch us over and over and over again as we attempt and fail, but always are held firmly in your grace, remembering who we really are, your kids who are loved and who have been claimed for a purpose. Release us this day, God, to live that rhythm over and over again as we try to love people in your name. We pray, Jesus, in your name. And the people of God said, amen.